Hi there, Brett Hornby here with another sports take video on my YouTube channel. Today I'm all decked out in my Flames jersey because obviously I have to talk about this big trade, big blockbuster trade you can count as a blockbuster in today's NHL that the Flames made on day 2 of the 2018 NHL Entry Draft. And definitely what's interesting with this trade is a lot of young pieces involved. 3 of the 5 pieces that we'll talk about in this trade that the Calgary Flames made with the Carolina Hurricanes were former top 10 draft picks. So I'll bring up my notes here and tell you the players that are on their way to Calgary and on their way to Carolina. So the Calgary Flames made a trade with the Carolina Hurricanes. Going the Carolina Hurricanes' way is the defenseman Dougie Hamilton, forward Michael Ferland, and defensive prospect Adam Fox are all going to the Carolina Hurricanes. In exchange, coming here to Calgary is forward Elias Lindholm and defenseman Noah Hanifin. So I'll give you a little blurb about each player and what they have done so far in the NHL and my take on who I think has won this trade or how I think the verdict of this trade will be decided in the future on what happens, what if. So first, I think, as most people say, that the player, whoever gets the best player in the trade usually wins the trade. And for right now, you would have to say the Carolina Hurricanes appear to be winners today because they acquired Dougie Hamilton, who is the best player in the trade. When you can also argue that there's a couple younger pieces coming Calgary's way that they still have more potential to grow and develop into players that they were thought to be when they were originally drafted. So for the case of Dougie Hamilton, he's 25 years old, a defenseman. Originally in 2011, he was drafted in the 9th round, or 9th overall, first round, by the Boston Bruins. And he played 4 seasons with the Boston Bruins. And then Brad Treliving made his first big trade on draft day in 2015 when he traded the Flames' first round pick. And Calgary had a couple second round picks, so they traded 2 second round picks with their first round pick in 2015 to acquire Dougie Hamilton, and then they signed him to a 6-year deal worth $34.5 million. So that was a big trade at the time. And Dougie Hamilton has definitely proven that he can be an offensive defenseman, where this past season he was tied for first in the league with 17 goals. He had a hat trick in one game, which actually was there live in the stands in the Sea of Red when he scored a hat trick in the 6-3 loss to the Florida Panthers. So that's interesting. But Dougie Hamilton, over his career, both with the 6 seasons with the Boston Bruins and the Calgary Flames, in 423 games, he has 64 goals, 156 assists, and 220 points, with 269 minutes and penalties. And also, he has played 23 games in the playoffs, both with the Bruins and the Flames, with 2 goals, 9 assists, 11 points, and 22 penalty minutes. And as I mentioned, he has already played 3 seasons in his 6-year contract that he signed back in 2015. That's overall was worth $34.5 million. So the next 3 seasons, the Carolina Hurricanes will add $5.75 million cap hit. And actually, according to Cap Friendly, starting next season, the last 2 years of his contract, he has a modified no trade clause where he has 12 teams that I think he can say he doesn't want to accept a trade to. So the Flames obviously wanted to look at shaking things up and also take advantage of the fact that there was a no modified trade clause yet. So anyway, that was the key piece in the trade, I say, right now is Dougie Hamilton. The second player that's going to the Hurricanes is Michael Ferland. He's 26. Originally, in 2010, he was drafted in the first round, 133rd overall by the Calgary Flames. And his career numbers, all with the Calgary Flames, is he's played 250 games with 42 goals, 47 assists, 89 points, and 135 penalty minutes. And he's also played in 13 playoff games with 3 goals, 2 assists, and 5 points for 30 penalty minutes. And I say he definitely had a prolific career in junior with the Brandon Wheat Kings, and he went to Memorial Cup with the Saskatoon Blades. But kudos to Michael Ferland that he actually overcame some substance abuse issues before he even started his NHL career. And for much of his career, he was just a plugger, where actually the last year and a half of the season of his career with the Flames, he actually played in the top line with Johnny Gaudreau and Sean Monahan, which I don't quite see him as a number one center, which would be interesting to see where he'll fit in with the Carolina Hurricanes, as right now this team has gone under ownership changes, and while there's a salary cap for everybody, Carolina is under a budget. And speaking of budgets, Michael Ferland still has 1 more year left on his deal, which has a $1.75 million cap hit, so he still will be under contract for next season with the Carolina Hurricanes. So I think that Michael Ferland, depending on where he's utilized in Carolina, and if they still have guys like Sebastian Aho and Jeff Skinner, who they're all rumored to possibly be shopped around or get traded, it's hard to say where we'll see Michael Ferland fit with the Carolina Hurricanes. Obviously, Dougie Hamilton, he was on the top pair with Mark Giordano. He'll definitely fit in well with Carolina. Has a strong defensive core, and I can definitely see him being on the top pair with the Hurricanes. And then the last player that the Flames threw in was defensive prospect Adam Fox, who's 20 years old. Originally, he was drafted in 2016 in the 3rd round, 66th overall. He's an American who played in the U.S. Developmental Hockey League, and the last couple of years he's played at Harvard, and I believe he's committed to play at Harvard for another season, but there were speculations that he was not going to sign with the Flames organization, so they might as well bundle him up with this trade and get something for him. So for the Carolina Hurricanes, I would say should be pretty excited to get an offensive defenseman in Dougie Hamilton, who definitely would be an upgrade over Noah Hanifin, who's coming Calgary's way, and Elias Lindholm. Depends on how to use Michael Ferland, but Calgary, I'm pretty excited about the prospects that's coming our way to the Sea of Red, because Elias Lindholm, he's a forward who plays center and right wing, who obviously that's the weak part for the organization, for the Flames, that they've always been struggling to find that winger or center for back to when we had Jerome McGinley jersey. But Ferland did have some chemistry with the Sean Monahan and Johnny Gaudreau on the first line, but I don't feel he was talented enough to be considered a true first line right winger. But I believe Elias Lindholm, who originally was drafted in 2013 in the first round, 5th overall by the Carolina Hurricanes, a pick before Sean Monahan, ironically, who I personally feel he can boast his career numbers, because over his career he's easily been counted on to score like at least 15 goals and 45 points. In his career with the Carolina Hurricanes, in 374 games, he actually has 64 goals, 124 assists for 108 points, and 76 penalty minutes. And Carolina hasn't been to the playoffs since 2009, so he doesn't have any playoff experience yet. And he's an RFA who just finished his 2-year, $2.7 million cap hit, or $5.7 million, $5.4 million overall. And one of the reasons why guys like Elias Lindholm and Noah Hanifin were expendable was because they were having contract issues on hammering out a deal with the Carolina Hurricanes. So on their end, they were hoping to cash in on their assets, and obviously I feel they definitely achieved that, while Calgary gets younger with this transaction. And the last piece that the Calgary Flames get is defenseman Noah Hanifin, who I feel the sky's definitely the limit with him, because he's actually only 21. Originally, in 2015, he was drafted in the first round, 5th overall by the Carolina Hurricanes. That goes back to the fact that 3 of the 5 pieces of this trade were all guys originally drafted in the top 10 in their respective drafts. And his career numbers with the Carolina Hurricanes, he's already played 3 full seasons, and he's only 21. And he's played 239 games, scored 18 goals, 65 assists, 83 points for 69 penalty minutes. And as mentioned, the Carolina Hurricanes have not been in the playoffs since 2009, so he has no NHL playoff experience. And he's an RFA just like Elias Lindholm, where he's just finished his entry-level contract, 3-year standard at $2.775 million, or $925,000 a season. So right here you can see that Noah Hanifin, in his career numbers, we definitely sacrificed some offense on the blue line. But I do feel that, and one person pointed out when I was watching other videos on YouTube on their breakdown of this trade, is that Noah Hanifin, this number is actually quite comparable, or even slightly better than Dougie Hamilton when he was 21. So I definitely like this trade. I was reading all the gossip on Hockey Buzz, and so there's a blogger named Todd Cordell who does his take on the Flames and the New Jersey Devils, and I was there with Todd, where I figured don't trade Dougie Hamilton for anything, because he is a special defenseman who you can never replace what he provides offensively and all the minutes he provides. But I figured with this package and the potential that we got in return, it was worth pulling the trigger to shake things up and maybe potentially move a few of our defensemen around to some we don't do anything. Because I think with this trade, TJ Brodie, who actually has struggled to play with Travis Hamonic this past season, I think he might move back up with Mark Giordano, the number 1 pair, and Noah Hanifin will play with Travis Hamonic, because Noah Hanifin is definitely an NHL top 4 defenseman. He'll definitely fit in there with the Calgary Flames, no problem. I think he'd be a nice fit with Travis Hamonic, and then depending on what they do with our bottom pair, if we're going to still keep Michael Stone, but we definitely have Brett Kulak. And then another reason that I think Adam Fox was expendable is, if you look in our system, I think Rasmus Andersson is definitely ready to be NHL ready defenseman, with Oliver Shillington knocking on the door, another guy that we drafted in 2015, and the guy that we drafted last year with our first overall pick, Juuso Välimäki. He's actually looking pretty good in junior, and some say he might challenge for an NHL spot here sooner rather than later. So I'm going to say right now I give the slight edge to Carolina winning the trade because they got Dougie Hamilton. But I think Calgary could split this trade right down the middle, depending on how Elias Lindholm works with being in the top 6 forward, definitely playing with Sean Monahan and Johnny Gaudreau, and how well does Noah Hanifin, even though he never was looked at as a offensive defenseman. I think where Dougie Hamilton was an offensive defenseman, I think Noah Hanifin can make up and showing that he can play a complete game without being a top 2 forward. And another factor with both Elias Lindholm and Noah Hanifin is that they're also familiar with Bill Peters, who currently is the new head coach of the Calgary Flames, which I felt like I was in the minority at the time, but I liked the hiring of Bill Peters, and because of his personality, and I figured he worked with a less talented team in Carolina. That the Flames, I think, have a little more talent than Carolina overall. It all depends on, if they can get better goaltending and reduce the shots, and then not have our offense stall down the stretch. Which also Elias Lindholm should definitely improve our power play with his scoring ability. Anyway, that's my take on the trade. It's definitely a really big trade that you can classify as a blockbuster. Younger pieces still in play who still have potential to fulfill what they were envisioned to being when they originally were drafted in the NHL. Anyway, if you enjoy this or any other videos on my channel, hit like and subscribe, and I'll keep chiming in on sports takes with the Flames, Dan Peters, Hitman, or Roughnecks for anything huge that happens in the off season or anything significant. I'll jump right in front of the camera and give you my takes on it. Anyway, I'll see you at the next video.